This is just some of the damage to infrastructure around Lincoln following the powerful 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck Canterbury in the early hours of Saturday, the 4th of September 2010. The earthquake caused an estimated $4 billion in damage across the region. Here in Lincoln, you didn't have to look far to see its effects. The historic Famous Grouse Hotel demolished after it was deemed unsafe. And further afield, damage to roading, housing and fertile farmland was also apparent.
I mean, it's a pretty surreal feeling. I think lying in bed, hearing glass breaking and thinking this is the big one, this is it. And to think that your property's been damaged and you've got nothing, there's nothing you can do about it. And yeah, it really hit home actually.
But it was just unbelievable effectively. Just the noise, the sheer noise, and then the vibration started. Wow, that was just phenomenal, just effectively getting tossed out of bed at 20 to 5 in the morning. Just undescribable really. Yeah. So my first thoughts were obviously what my parents are up to. They're obviously reasonably fit people, so they were both fine. The house was majorly intact, so just come straight to the fire station, and at that stage aftershocks were still happening.
In fact, our first truck left the station within minutes of the quake.
You were on board that first truck. Can you kind of describe what was going through your mind as you were rolling out?
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty first was actually getting doors up, no power, everything's in darkness, and you're rolling out the door and you really don't know what you're going to be heading to. Our priority was to go to Lincoln Hospital. We know it's a very old wooden building, so you're really uncertain as to what you're going to find. Fortunately, everybody had congregated into one room, just into the lounge area, and were basically supporting themselves there. And the building itself looked pretty much undamaged, so we're quite fortunate with that. From then, we basically went down to the Lincoln University. That was our next priority because we know that there is accommodation buildings there, large multi-storey accommodation buildings. Again, some of those buildings, particularly Hudson Hall, is 1950 style concrete building. But apart from the alarms actually sounding in that building, everybody was out and evacuated, and everybody was fine, and the building itself was not substantially damaged.
We'd planned for years to, in this sort of event, when this sort of thing happened, is the guys to check and make sure their families are okay at home and not to come rushing around here as soon as the siren goes. Everything went to plan. The guys stayed at home and checked on their families and made sure everything was secure and happy at home, and then they worked their way around here. And yeah, we had our first truck on the road within 10 minutes of the main quake happening, and out doing its job that we'd planned it would do. And the other trucks, as the more crew arrived, we sent them on surveillance around the district. We got down to Taitap and out to Springston, and then we worked down towards the huts, and just sort of got a picture of what our district was looking like, and fed that information back to the Civil Defence headquarters at Rolleston.
The true extent of the damage became apparent with daylight, and as you'd expect, our brigade played a critical role in assisting the community.
There were no sector posts set up in Lincoln on the day, as we suspected would happen. So the fire station became the hub of the community, as we expected it would. And we had people coming here who'd had houses split in half, and their houses weren't habitable, and they wanted to know what to do and looking for advice on who they should talk to, etc. So yeah, we became the sort of the one-stop shop for everything that was happening on the days.
We attended close to 100 calls in just 4 days. Fallen chimneys and damaged buildings were the norm.
Yeah. Probably not. Yeah. That's not a 40 guys. No, don't leave holes in this.
The Anglican church looks safe and sound, but it's actually quite unstable. The roof pretty much got lifted up and shunted sideways. And meanwhile, the Catholic church also took a bit of a pounding. The cracks are pretty apparent here. These paddocks have turned to lakes as a result of the earthquake. The water just came pouring up through the landscape. And everywhere you go there are these little volcanoes of sand and mud that have just erupted up through the ground. Paddocks are just absolutely chocker with these. It's quite remarkable to see. You can see a lot of the mud and sand that came up during the earthquake and why it caused some of the flooding. It blocked all the farm drains and things. It's now been largely scooped out, so we haven't had any problems, but this particular corner was quite a concern in the hours after the earthquake, with water backing up into houses nearby.
I was absolutely thrilled with the job the guys done. We did dozens of chimneys for days after, and that whole week after. No, the guys did a brilliant job. I'm absolutely thrilled and proud of the work they did, and I'm really glad that they were able to help the community the way they have. So.
Awesome effort, yeah, I mean, but you've got to thank the families too, because, you know, it didn't interrupt just us, it interrupted everybody, you know, wives and kids, and you know, they played a big part of it as well. But, you know, 100 odd calls over a week, you know, it was a pretty big ask for the guys.
To put it into perspective, an earthquake of the same magnitude earlier this year hit Haiti and killed about 200,000 people. Here in Canterbury, it was incredibly fortunate that no one was killed, only a few were injured, and our generally strong buildings held firm. Sure, we lost the local hotel and many homes were damaged, but it's fair to say Lincoln residents were much more fortunate than many other Cantabrians. The following footage and photos sum up what was a truly devastating event. painful, yes, but everywhere you looked, one thing was very clear: a community spirit and resolve stronger than the earthquake itself.
Well, we seem to have most of our regular Saturday lunchtime drinkers here today, commonly known as the farmers market. So it's been tradition for many, many years, and they really can't give it up. So they've turned up again today, but it's open air today. We don't have a roof over our heads at the present time. So hopefully we'll get established in the building you can see behind us, which is all that's left of the famous Krause Hotel. We'll hopefully get temporarily established in there in the next 3 or 4 weeks while the hotel's rebuilt, which I guess will take the best part of 12 months.
We were very lucky, I think, in Lincoln when you look around some of the other areas, Kaiapoi, Bexley and Brooklands. I believe the Brooklands fire station have lost 20 of their staff have lost their houses out of 23, so the station's pretty well written off as well by the sound of it, so that's pretty devastating for a small area like that and for that community. We were very lucky. There's been some very unfortunate people I know even around this area, around the Taitap area, who've lost their houses and that, and we're thinking of those sort of people, but generally we were very lucky, and as the same in Christchurch, there was no loss of life or anything.
Have you kind of noticed that the community, since the earthquake, the community's been really been very helpful to each other and all looked after one another, and particularly on the day as well?
Yeah, particularly on the day. We turned up to a number of streets, and people came to us and said they had checked all the houses in the street, they had made contact with some of the elderly in the street. We also responded to an elderly person living alone out in the country areas, and when we arrived there was some people from Lincoln actually were already there. They were giving him some hot soup, and so they'd already basically made contact and helped the community quite markedly with that.
So I think I've lived in this area for 32 years now, and it used to be a very small community and everybody sort of knew each other, and you sort of lost that over the last number of years, and but on the day it was amazing to see everybody out supporting their neighbours, doing their community thing and making sure that everybody was all right. I'd only finished checking my own family and checking the house and making sure everything was okay, and I had a knock on the door from one of the neighbours down the road who happened to be a nurse, and she was offering her services and also offering to help us if we need any help at the station. So it was great to see that community spirit come to light, and everybody helping each other out.